In this tutorial we are going to recreate this 3D style intro from Magnates Media. This animation as well as overall this tutorial will be in a more beginner friendly style, so if you've never worked with 3D scenes before, this is a video for you. Now if you want to go from being an average editor, struggling to create high quality content and land high paying clients, to a leverage editor who is able to work with some of the biggest brands and influencers, then come join our leveraged editor program and community. Right now we are hosting workshops in which we show you how to attract high-paying clients and scale your editing agency. On the last two workshops we went over how to create your offer and how to find and reach out to potential high-paying clients. And on the next third call, that will be on May 12th, we'll go over operations and scaling. And of course the previous two calls were recorded, and if you join the community you will be able to watch them. But not only that, when you join the community we'll also show you exactly how to edit in some of the most popular styles like Danko, Ali Abdal or Iman Gadzhi. So if you want to elevate your editing skills, then join the program and the community, link is in the description, and with that, let's get into the tutorial. Okay, so the first thing to do in After Effects is to create a new composition in a horizontal format. So you can just copy my settings from there and let's set the duration to 10 seconds. Click OK. And as you can see, I already imported all of the assets that we'll be using in this animation. So select the pictures Man 1, Man 2, Man 3, Man 4, a farm and a boy, and drag it to the timeline. These are the assets that we'll use in the first scene, so let's position them correctly. Okay, put the boy one layer above the farm layer. So as you can see, I already prepared all of the assets for you in Photoshop because these houses were not here. I also color corrected them in Photoshop, so we can just do all of the work in After Effects. So let's start by color correcting this 4 men. Also now I imported the original video because I forgot about that. So let's put it in the asset folder and let's hide it for now. Select the Man 1 layer and search for effect hue and saturation. Set the saturation to -100 and the lightness to -25. Now copy this effect from there and paste it on other Men layers. And now let's adjust that so they kinda look the same. So I see that Men 2 needs to be a little darker, so let's decrease the lightness to -50. Okay, basically the same on the Men 4. Decrease the darkness to -40 maybe in this case. And now we'll also apply the curves effect on the Men 2. So search for effect curves, apply it here, make the shadows a little darker and the brights a little brighter, shadows even darker, like that I would say. Now copy this effect and paste it onto the Men 4, but actually make the shadows a little brighter. Okay, I think all of them look pretty good. So now we can right click there and create a new camera. The type of the camera will be a 2-node camera, and just keep the settings at default and hit OK. Put the camera at the very top and let's put the original video at the very bottom. Okay, now put all of these layers in 3D except for the original one. Go right there and change the view to 2 views, and now we'll position all of these layers in the 3D space. So select the 4 Men layers because they will be kinda next to each other, and just drag the Z rotation so that they are kinda here. Select the boy layer and put him there, and select the farm layer and put it further away from the viewer. Okay, now find the 2 Men layers that are most to the left and most to the right, so it's this one, and put him a little further away because he should be behind this guy. And now also this layer, put it further away, like that. Okay, and now solo the original layer so we'll only be able to see it. So first of all, click this eye so it's visible, and then check this box here, so now we only see the original layer. And we have to find the moment of the transition to the next screen. So it's right there somewhere here. Let's mark this moment using Shift-4 shortcut. And we created a mark here. And now hide the original layer again. And we can go back to one view. And now at this moment we'll compose the final frame. So we'll place everything in the right position, just how it should look at the very end. So select all of the layers that create this frame, open position on them by clicking P, and then click Shift plus S to also open the scale, and keyframe position and scale at this moment. Then go at the very start and keyframe position and scale there. And now we have to adjust everything just how we want it to look at the very end. So make the farm background bigger, and I think also it should be higher because the houses should be almost at the very edge of the screen. So make it bigger, 130 to match that, and put it lower, I would say even bigger, 133, then put it a little higher. Okay, this looks good. Now with the boy. So select him and open the scale, change the scale to 120, put him something like this, and maybe scale to 124. Okay, like that, I think his position is pretty good. And now select all of the men layers, and we should not be able to see them. So go to 2 views and just change the Z position of them so that they are not visible on the screen. So like that. Okay, one more thing that I forgot about, we have to add the text. So right click here, create a new text. A teenager abandons his life on his family farm. So let's write that. So select this layer and type here. Okay, we have the text, but as you can see, it's way too big. So select this layer and change the text size here. Okay, so I think the upper line is good, but now we have to make the bottom line of the text bigger. So highlight it and change the scale to something like this. 340 I think is good. Now the text looks pretty good. I will also put it higher, like there. And also now I see that our farm layer, so our background should also be higher. So select it and adjust it. But then also we have to open the scale and make it bigger again. So 137 maybe. Okay, I think it's pretty good. So now select the text layer and put it in 3D and put this layer below the camera layer. And to change the orders of the layers, I'm using a shortcut Ctrl, Alt and down arrow or up arrow. Okay, I see that I changed the position of the farm right there and not on the last keyframe. So 137, let's copy that here. And also the position, we can just delete this keyframe and move this keyframe there. And I will actually also move the boy a little lower, like that. Okay, so this is our final frame, and now let's go to the start and adjust everything there how we want it at the start. So at the start we obviously want everything to be kind of rotated because this is how it looks in the original video. So we can right click there and create a new null object, put it below the camera, check this box to put it in 3D and select all of the layers here. And connect them to this null. Right now open the position and the scale on the null, keyframe it here and also keyframe it at the very end. Also keyframe the rotation, so keyframe the rotation there and also here. And then at the start rotate it on the Z axis. So plus 13 I think is pretty good. Let's go back to 2 views and let's now adjust everything on the screen. So we want these 2 guys to be visible, so we want them closer. I think like that. We can put this guy a little lower. The boy, we can put him lower and we can also change his scale, make him bigger. Okay, like that. We actually want these 2 guys to be further away from the boy and move them a little to the right. So change the X position, maybe too much. Something like this. And at the start I think they should be higher than the boy, so I would say something like this. We can put the boy lower and now the other 2, so move them to the left, move this one lower. Okay, actually I believe we should make all of them a little closer to the screen and then adjust everything. So like that and then like that, and then change the scale on these 2 layers, so make these 2 guys smaller, maybe 90. Okay, so this guy is in good position, so we only have to change this guy, like that. Now these 2 other guys, try to match them with the other 2 guys, that's that position. We should make the third guy bigger, so set the scale to 110, something like this. The level at which their heads are should match, so it's pretty good. Okay, now we can move these 2 guys a little to the right, and we can also move the boy a little to the right. For now it looks like that. So now we can change the background, so go to farm layer and change the scale on that, make it really big at the start, I would say 170 maybe. Okay, that's too big. We just basically want this background to cover the whole screen, so 160. Okay, it's good. But maybe we can make it even smaller, 155. Yep. Now also I didn't put the keyframes on the text, and also the text is automatically in a good position in the 3D because we moved the boy layer closer to the screen. So put the position and scale keyframes on the text layer, also in the same places. Let's see how it looks for now. Okay, you can see it looks pretty good, but what we can also do is, at the very start in the original video there is kinda this feeling that the camera is also going down and not only zooming in. So to create that we can just basically keyframe everything on the null object at this moment and just put everything higher there, like that. And now this gives us the perspective, this gives us a feeling that at the start it's going down, that at the start the camera is also going down. Of course it's not smooth, but we'll smooth it in a moment. Okay, I believe at the last frame the farm layer, so the background should be even a little higher. So select this layer and move it like that. and then change the scale obviously to 138 or 140. Yep, it's covering the screen right now. So now we only have to adjust the text. So at the start, we want the text to be much smaller, maybe 80, and also we can move it to the right, to be honest, because if you look in the original video, you can see the text from the very start, and that's not the case for us, so make it even smaller, like 70. Okay, this looks kinda unnatural, so maybe go back to 80 and just change the Y position, put it lower, and also change the X position. Also at the end we can put this text a little higher, like that. And now we have to add an effect typewriter to this text. And this effect automatically also creates keyframes for us. And you can see it's just typing everything that we want there. Yeah, I would say it's pretty good. So let's go to one view and see how it looks for now. Okay, I would say I will have to put the text a little lower at the start. Okay, yeah, now it's pretty good. So now we'll smooth these keyframes on the null object. So select all of the keyframes on the null object and click F9, go to graph editor. And what we'll do is we'll just move this keyframe, so the position keyframes from the ground, like that, and then the second one like that. This way this animation is not stopping at this keyframe, but it's just continuing. So now we just have to do two more things to this frame, and the first one is to blur the background. So just go to the background layer and search for effect the Gaussian blur, apply it to this layer and set the blurriness to 15. And the second thing is to create this flash animation, this transition at the start. You can see in the original layer at the start we have this transition. So my transition will obviously not look the same, but the whole animation also will not look the same because I'm using different assets. So go to project right there and import film burn overlays. Put it at the very top, put it above the camera because we don't need that in 3D. And right now just find the right transition. So I think the first one is pretty cool. So go to the moment when it's finished. So right there. Cut this layer in this place and delete the rest of that. Now go to toggle switches modes and set the mode on that to screen. And to really make it look the same, we'll also have to create the black screen at the start. So let's see. The black screen is visible up until this moment. So let's mark this moment, and the transition goes on up until this moment. So let's mark it. Okay, hide the original layer. Right now, right click here, create a new solid. The color should be black, of course. Hit OK. And cut this solid in this moment that we just marked. Put it at the very top so it's in the right position. Now actually put it below the transition layer. Now select the film burn transition, and as you can see it's too long, but we can make it faster. So right click right there, go to time and click enable time remapping. Now go to the end of this animation, so right there, and keyframe the time remap here. Right click on this keyframe and select toggle hold keyframe, and now move this keyframe to the second point that we marked, so right there. And this transition happens perfectly up until this moment. We can even cut the rest of that. Okay, and by marking this point here, I actually lost the mark when we have our transition. We can find it if we open all of the used keyframes on the null object, and you do that by selecting the null object and then clicking U to show the used keyframes. And we basically mark these keyframes at the point of the transition. So let's move this mark again here. And one last thing to add to this scene is the fire sparks. So import this asset. Now open the rotation on that by clicking R and rotate it by 180 degrees because we want the fire sparks to go from top to bottom. Maybe I will even make it, no, not that bigger, but I will put it higher like that because we don't really need the sparks at the bottom of the screen. Okay, and now change the mode, the blending mode, to screen. And also cut it at the start because we don't want the sparks visible when there is a black screen here. So set the start of the sparks here. Okay, so the first frame is ready, and now we'll create the second frame and the transition to second frame. So select all of the layers that we have right now on the screen, except for the camera layer, and cut them in this moment. And now delete the rest of these layers, like that. And at this moment, we'll obviously start creating our new frame. So this frame will consist of layers like Boy 2, the street, and the smoke one, I think. Oh, and also range, obviously. So select these layers and put them to the timeline. Now set the start of them at this mark. And also all of them except for the smoke one layer, move them below the camera. We can actually for now hide the smoke one layer because this will only be the overlay. So click on this eye here to hide it. Okay, and now we'll do the same thing here as we did with the first frame. So we'll keyframe it at the start and then we'll keyframe it at the moment of the transition to the next screen, and we'll adjust all of the positions. So we can create a new null object, put it below the camera, go to toggle switches modes and enable 3D on all of the new layers. Set the start of this null object to this mark. Select the wrench layer, and I want to be able to see that, so put it above the street. Okay, now rotate it on the Z-axis, like that. Duplicate this layer, so with this layer selected, click Ctrl D. This duplicated one, put it to the left. Right click on this layer, go to transform and flip it vertically. Now adjust the Z rotation, like that. Go to two views. And one more thing that I did, but I don't think we actually have to do that, is we don't have to put the background in 3D. So let's uncheck this box on the street layer. Go to the boy layer and put him closer to the viewer. Then select two wrench layers and put them closer to the viewer and also in front of the boy. Now go to the street layer and we can adjust the scale and the position. So decrease the scale, that's for sure. We can go back to one view. Okay, and it should match with the edge of the screen. So let's zoom in here, and I'm putting this layer higher by just clicking up arrow. Okay, this is pretty good. Now let's adjust the boy. So put him so he's also on the very edge of the composition. So like that is pretty good. Okay, now we'll change the scale on the wrenches. So you have to pay attention to that, because right now if we select both of the wrenches and we try to change the scale on both of them, only one of them is changing the scale correctly, because as you can see the starting scale values are different. On one of them it's 100% and on the other is -100, and it's because we flipped this one. So let's change the scale first on this one to something like -75, and then on the second one basically the same number but with positive values, so 75. Select all of these layers and connect them to the null that we created. Now this second scene is a little different than the first scene, because we actually will add our third frame right now. So the third frame is basically this background with this guy shouting at the boy, and we'll add that right now because the transition between these two is just a movement downwards, like you can see the hard edge right there. So to create the third screen we'll need assets like background 3 and the sad boy. Select them and move them to the timeline. Now move them below the camera layer and set the start of them here. Move the sad boy above the background. And as you can see on the background layer, we already have the guy shouting and the background, and the sad boy layer is a separate layer. So now just select both of these layers, open position and move them down, and we want the edge of this layer to be perfectly in the same position as the bottom edge of this second frame layer. So we have to move it down, zoom in and make sure that these two layers are in the same position. Kinda like this will look good, I think. Now let's go to the original layer and we want to see how it basically looks. So the first wrench starts appearing right from the start, I would say. And then the second wrench on this frame, so let's mark it Shift+5. The screen is zooming up until this moment, Shift+6. And then it's going down up until this moment, Shift+7. And then after that, the text 6 days starts appearing. Let's hide the original layer and let's animate that. So open the position and scale on the null object, keyframe it here, go to the second mark that we created, keyframe it here, go to the third mark, keyframe it again, connect the sad boy and the background layer to this null. Okay, now I remember we actually don't need the keyframes on this mark because this mark is a second wrench. Now just keyframe the null on the last mark, like that. Okay, and at the second mark we want to increase the scale and also put it a little lower. Or maybe actually put it a little higher, like that. Yeah, now it gives us the feeling that the camera is also moving down, but not that much I would say, so a little more like that. And then also increase the scale to 140 maybe. And at the last mark we want to move the whole screen down. Okay, now I can also see that the position of the third background is not good. So select the third background and move it higher. Like that is good. Let's at first copy these two keyframes, go to the third mark and copy it here, because we want the zooming amount to be the same. And now let's move it down, like that. We also see that we want this third background to be smaller, because when we zoomed in the null, the background is not looking good. So go to the background, open the scale and decrease the value here. This is good. And we can also put this null a little lower, like that. Let's see how it looks right now. Okay, it's good, but you can see that the movement down is really rough. So we have to select these keyframes, click F9 go to graph editor and we'll create our easing there. So select this set of keyframes, and mainly what we want to do is move the second handle there like that, so it creates an ease out animation. Yeah, now it's better. And also what I see is that we want the zoom to be stronger, so maybe 150. And then we want to move this boy like that, so lower. Yeah, now it's better. Go back to the graph editor and create a slight ease in animation like that, right there. So you have to move this handle to the left. Maybe here we want it a little higher, like that. So now we can also animate the wrenches. Hello, so it's me from the future, and the video is already finished, but I wasn't satisfied with the way I explained this animation on the wrenches, so I will just record it again and tell you what I did there. So we can open the used keyframes on the wrenches, and you can see I basically animated the position and the rotation on the wrenches. So the first one is the right wrench. I animated the position on that so it goes from right to left. These are the position keyframes, you can see. And I animated the rotation up until the very point when it's basically not visible on the screen anymore because the third frame begins. You have to animate the rotation up until the very end. These are the last rotation keyframes for me, because you don't want the rotation animation to randomly end at some moment, because then this layer will just stop at some moment and we don't want that. And the rotation is basically animated going from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen. You can see like that. And I can show you the values on all of these keyframes. So here, then here, there. Here are the second rotation keyframe. And here are the second rotation of the second wrench. And now I will also show you the easing applied to the position keyframes on the wrenches. So go to graph editor and you can see that I basically eased it in as much as I can. So I selected, for example, this handle and just moved it as much to the left as I can. And then also the right handle, the same, as much to the left as you can. And the same easing is also applied to this position keyframes. You can see. So this is how we make this animation, and we can continue with the video. So now we'll color correct everything in this frame. So first select the street layer and search for effect hue and saturation. Check the colorize box, change the colorize hue to 20, colorize saturation to 30, and colorize lightness to -7, I would say, or maybe even -9. Make it darker, and boom, this way we've created this orangey look. And now copy this hue and saturation effect and paste it on the boy 2 layer, and he also matches the aesthetic. And one more thing that we'll do to make this frame look even better is to select the wrench and apply deep glow to that. Change the radius to 300 and change the exposure to 0.5. Deep glow is a paid plugin, but I highly recommend it because it can really elevate your edits. Okay, so there is only one last thing that we have to do in this frame, and it's to go at the start, make the smoke layer visible, and now we'll use it to really elevate this frame. So first of all, go to toggle switches modes and set the blending mode to screen. This way you can see that we have a smoke at the bottom. Now using shift plus left arrow, I will be moving it to the left, because we want this smoke on the left bottom corner of the screen. And now parent link this smoke layer to the null object, and this way the smoke is moving with the whole screen. So now let's say from this moment we'll start animating the sad boy, and we can also put the sad boy in 3D. So enable 3D by checking this box, go to 2 views and put him a little closer to the viewer, so we'll create this depth of field. Go back to one view, open the position on this boy, keyframe it here, go at the mark that we created there, actually go even a little further than the mark, keyframe it here and put him higher. And at the start obviously put him way lower, like that. But now select these 2 keyframes, click F9, go to graph editor and we'll create an ease in animation. So select this keyframe and move the handle to the left. This way this animation happens faster at the start and then it slows down. And this is how it looks. Okay, yeah, it's good. So now we also want to color correct this boy. So apply hue and saturation to him, decrease the saturation to -100. Also let's decrease the lightness to maybe -25. And now also apply curves effect on him. Make the shadows darker and the brights brighter. Now select the background layer and again apply deep glow. As I told you, we'll do that. Change the radius to 200 and change the exposure to maybe something like 0.2. Yeah, it's pretty good. So now we only have to create the text, 6 days. So right click there, create a new text. of course type 6 days there. Align it to the right side, so click here. Change the color to blue. Adjust the position, put it here. Let's see in the original right now. Okay, the text is way bigger. So select this layer and click S and increase the scale. Also the text is rotated, so open the rotation by clicking R and rotate it like that. The text will start appearing somewhere here, so a couple of frames after the mark that we created. Let's set the start of that text layer here. We also don't have to put this text layer below the camera because it will not be in 3D. Okay, and this text actually has a very simple animation. Firstly, the number 6 appears and then the word days. So we actually have to create two text layers. So duplicate this layer by clicking Ctrl D. On the duplicate, let's delete the number 6, then move it down like that. And on the first layer, delete the word days. Then go like 10 frames later, or maybe like 8 frames later, and set the start of the word days here. This way it's animated, as you can see. And one thing that I forgot about is we have to create the flash transition between these two scenes. So go to project and drag the flash transition to the timeline. Put it above the camera. Set this layer so that in the moment of the transition, the screen is fully blue. Now go to toggle switches modes and set the blend mode to screen. Let's see right now. Yeah, now it's much better. Maybe a little later, like that. We can even trim this flash transition layer to this point because nothing is happening after that. Okay, so there is only one more thing that I will do to make this animation, I mean the third screen, maybe a little more lively. Make the viewer feel that there is something happening here, except for the 6 days appearing. So we'll make this boy jitter, we'll make him wiggle. So select the sad boy layer and search for effect transform. Apply this effect here. And now alt click on the position. This way you open the expression window and type wiggle, open parentheses and something like 2,3, let's say. So it's a pretty subtle wiggle. So he's wiggling a little, like if I zoom in, you'll probably be able to see that. Yeah, you can see, but it's too subtle. So let's increase the wiggle to 5. Because in the wiggle expression, the first value indicates how many times per second the property will change. So in this case, it will be 2 times per second. And the second value indicates how much will it change. And now we can right click on the position and copy expression only. Go to rotation and Ctrl V to paste it here. But on the rotation, this wiggle will be way too strong. So we'll set the second value in the bracket to something like 0.3. Okay, and now we made this boy wiggle. Okay, so there are a couple of final adjustments that I want to show you that I forgot to add in the main recording. So the first one is to blur the edges of the first scene. To do that, right click here, create a new adjustment layer, go up until the transition to the second screen, so right there, set the end of this adjustment layer here. Then with this adjustment layer selected, go to shape tools and double click on ellipse tool. This way you create an ellipse that is a size of the full screen. And this ellipse is now a mask for this adjustment layer. Let's put this adjustment layer below the flash transition and apply an effect, the Gaussian blur, to that. Set the blurriness to something like 30. And you can see it's blurring everything that is inside of this mask, but we can check this box to invert it. And right now with the adjustment layer selected, click F to open the mask feather option and feather it by a lot, something like 300. This way we have a feathered blur at the edges. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the text looks different in the original video, so we'll adjust that. I have to change the size of the first line, make it smaller, and then increase the size of the second line. Let's go at the very end to see how it looks. Okay, this is pretty good, and now I have to make all of the letters longer. So we do that by changing this option. You can make the letters longer. I think something like 122 is good. And now increase the distance between both of the lines to something like this. And now the last third thing is to put motion blur on basically everything, because this will make all of the transitions smoother. So you enable motion blur by checking this box here. So basically for now on everything, and in a moment we'll check. So we don't need the motion blur on original, we don't need it on the null object, on the second null object. And here also I will put motion blur on the layers that are above the camera. Okay, so these are all of the adjustments. Okay, and now we made this boy wiggle, and this is everything in this animation. And if you want to learn more advanced styles of editing like Iman Gadzhi, Danko or Ali Abdal, then make sure to join Leverage Editor program and community, where currently for the 2 more weeks there are live workshops going on where we tell you how to scale an editing agency and land high-paying clients. So join now, link is in the description, and with that, thank you guys for watching and see you in the next tutorial.